More second, guys, while we prepare and just make sure we don't run into this again. Okay, excellent. So to start over, guys, my name is Bob Boulay. I'm a senior consultant with ownCloud, and we're going to be bringing you through managing your ownCloud logs using Splunk today. A couple of housekeeping items. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be recording this session. So if, based on the delay, if any of you have to drop off early, we will have a recorded element of this session that you'll be able to get access to after the live version is done. Questions. If you have questions, feel free to type them in as we go. You don't have to wait to the end. We will get to as many as we can in a shortest period as we can. And if we don't get to your question, please rest assured we will be following up with you on a one-off basis to make sure that we get to you and answer your question fully. So that there, I just want to make sure you understand that. And then ultimately, today's presentation is going to be made up of a presentation via PowerPoint as well as some elements of an online demo. So I'm going to be demoing as well a couple of elements going to the live product just to be able to show you that stuff. So with that all said, guys, let me go ahead and start the presentation. And, you know, what I like to do, guys, when we're doing any of these things is really do a quick review of, you know, what ownCloud is. Why are you here? What are you looking at? Why do you care about ownCloud? And really, what problem are we trying to solve? And we've sort of generalized the problem to solve by calling it the Dropbox problem. And ultimately, what you run into with the Dropbox problem is with the flow of data moving fast and furious, files getting bigger, and ultimately your employees trying to communicate with each other, with outside vendors, contractors, all of the people that sort of in their sphere of influence during their workday, they start to run into issues in terms of actually communicating or getting pieces of data over to those users or over to those recipients. What that ultimately ends up in is those users looking for a solution to be able to share a big file, to be able to collaborate on a Word document, a PowerPoint, an Excel spreadsheet, or something along those lines. Ultimately, what that results in is them going off and finding a solution like Dropbox. Free, easy to set up, easy to use, really sounds like the perfect solution. The problem is they're signing up for that on a private basis. So they're basically owning that account. They sign up for it. They start putting company data in that Dropbox account. Now, not only is there an issue with them owning that account, so when they leave the company, if they leave the company, if something happens, you no longer have control of that data. They actually own that Dropbox account. You actually have no more control over that. Once they're gone, all of that data has leaked away from you. Now, on the other side, you may think to yourself, well, if I could solve that, you know, maybe I could use something like this. The other part of the problem here is when that data goes into a Dropbox type of situation, it's now off in the public cloud. So again, you still don't have access to where that data lives. You don't know where ultimately it's sitting, who on the back end has access to it. So ultimately, you lose control of that information. So really what you're doing is in an attempt to accommodate users and allow them to go ahead and share files, collaborate, do all of these things, you're compromising security of data. You're putting data at risk, and ultimately this is not something that, you know, for the sake of communication that you're looking to do. So ownCloud comes along and ultimately solves this problem by giving you that exact same user experience. We're going to allow your users to have that exact same experience in terms of file sync and share, access to their files from their desktop, their laptop, their mobile devices, ultimately being able to collaborate internally or collaborate externally. But the difference here is that this is you're going to host this solution in your data center. The data is going to continue to reside in your data center. So you're not going to be in a situation where your data is compromised, or if you have someone that leaves, that data is no longer reachable to you, or you can no longer claw that information back. It's not lost. There's no data leakage here. So ultimately, we're giving you that user experience. We're giving your users the ability to go ahead and the flexibility to access these files from anywhere without the security risks associated with a solution like Dropbox. Now, Just a quick reminder, in terms of what ownCloud is, I think I've covered some of this. Completely on-site. So this is going to be an on-site solution that you're going to deploy in your data center, integrated with your IT infrastructure. So whether you're deploying on physical machines, a virtual platform, whether you're a Windows shop, a Linux shop, whether your chosen mobile devices are Android versus iOS, from an ownCloud perspective, it simply doesn't matter. We can integrate with any IT infrastructure. Extensible, so extensible solutions through open APIs. One of the nice parts about the product is that it can be customized, it can be extended, it can be quickly and easily adapted to meet your needs. So one of the things that our customers are always telling us is we're not trying to stuff some cookie cutter solution down their throats. We're actually going to work with you ultimately to create within our framework a solution that's going to meet your needs and your end user needs. So really, when you think about what ownCloud's doing, creating that experience, creating that easy to access data, create an experience that's easy to allow your users to share data without all of those security risks. So before we dive into the actual topic for today, one last thing on ownCloud to cover off is sort of what are the components of ownCloud. So, and today we're going to be focusing mainly on the top piece here, which is the ownCloud server, and looking at those logs. But if you think about the ownCloud server, the end-tier web app with a database and storage standing behind it, this is really where all of the administration is going to take place, where one of the access methods here for end users is a browser interface. So this is where that browser interface is served up from. But this is where you as an administrator are going to be able to come in and set policy, track control, track sharing, do all of those things that you need to do as you have this in-house solution, but also to maintain a level of accountability and control who's accessing what in the system. And then if you move down the pyramid here, we look at, sort of what are the ways that the end user can access their files. And of course, there's the browser interface, but we also have an iOS and Android client to allow users to take and access that data mobilely, and then ultimately a Windows, Mac, and Linux desktop synchronization client. Again, so to make this user experience as simple as possible, simply go ahead and have a user save to their home directory, and ultimately those files are synchronized to ownCloud and then suddenly are now available to them on their iOS client, or they can be shared within the organization. So those are the components of that sort of ownCloud deployment that I wanted to cover. So now we can get into sort of the topic at hand today, which is really ownCloud logging and Splunk, which is a tool that we've chosen to show you how to actually make the most of that ownCloud logging module. So for those of you that have looked at the product or have been out to our website, and you'll see we've got a module for ownCloud logging, you may be asking to yourself, what do I get? What do I get with ownCloud logging? Why should I care? And there really are two personas that I've decided to cover here in this slide in terms of consuming this information. One is the ownCloud admin. So obviously, as the ownCloud admin or somebody responsible for this system, we're going to provide you with key data about the ownCloud instance, key data around any errors that are impacting the ownCloud system. So all of that stuff is being reported into the ownCloud log. So if there's a problem with the system, an issue that happens, and you need quick access to some information, this is where you're going to go. This is also something that you want to monitor, as we'll show you in Splunk, the ability to go ahead and monitor for specific types of entries and actually make those entries actionable by pushing alerts out. The other thing that you need to know here is any support of the product. So if you're an enterprise customer, any help that you need in terms of support of the product, we're going to work with you using the ownCloud logs to try and uncover any issues that may be going on as well within the instance. Now, as we move down, the next persona is for your security and your compliance team, your executive management team, who are going to be looking at, who's accessing this information, so who's logging into the system. Have there been a gratuitous number of failed login attempts? Do I have somebody that shouldn't be accessing these files actually logging into the system, which may result in, maybe having to make some adjustments in your LDAP backend or something along those lines? You were also going to give you the who, what, where, and when of file access. So who's accessing individual files, who's changing, who's updating, who's deleting these files. And then the who, what, where, and when of file sharing. So who's sharing files with who? How are they sharing them? Are they simply sharing them inside of the ownCloud system? Are they sharing them externally via links? How are those files being shared? And ultimately, what we want to help you do is ensure accountability, be able to show file access compliance, be able to ultimately give you the tool that you need to provide to the other business units to be able to show who's accessing what, when, where, and how. So ultimately, that's what we're doing with the ownCloud logging module, and ultimately combining that with Splunk to create a complete user experience. Now, the second part of this that we want to leverage is Splunk itself. So Splunk is a very simple tool to set up. You can leverage your existing database server, so there's no reason to go off and create an entirely new ecosystem for Splunk. And I'm going to show you a picture of sort of where it fits in here in just a couple of minutes. It's a browser-based application, so again, there's no software to install on your laptop. You simply go ahead and access everything through the browser. Multiple monitoring servers can be stood up, so for some customers, monitoring and log monitoring is something that is going to require HA because it's that mission critical. Again, very, very simple. Simple to configure in terms of actually collection of data. So, you can either set up a pull or push mechanism to actually collect this information, depending on, the various networking rules that you have within your organization. Push or pull may be more appropriate. Create custom data types. And again, one of the things that you'll be able to do is actually go in and convert custom data types or create custom data types, take data fields and make them actionable. So again, we'll cover all that here. And then ultimately, one of the other things that I like to mention is that it ships with prepackaged data types already. So, if you're going to go in and actually monitor your entire ownCloud stack, that may include Apache logs or IIS logs, Windows logs, various Linux logs. Splunk is already pre-configured to do that, so we're going to make it nice and simple for you to get a 360-degree view of your ownCloud instance. Now, the next piece, once you've got Splunk installed and have got it configured, and again, that's very, very simple to do, it's installing the ownCloud logging module. So again, we've got that right at our website. You can go and grab that logging module or contact your account manager if you're an existing customer and would like to get access to that. Simple to download and install. So we ship with a set of instructions that allows you to go ahead and install the applications that are specific to file access, sharing, and the administrative auditing of what's happening with ownCloud. So that's a very, very simple piece there, and it expands logging to add those pieces. Without these, you basically get some of the more basic, system health, system status types of messages. But the power here in the ownCloud logging module is to open up the realm of actual accountability and being able to look at and comply with the various rules and regulations that you're facing by being able to prove who has access, and from a security perspective, be able to see who's doing what, so you can actually retrace your steps. It's very simple to define a log file type in Splunk. So it's, again, if you go through and create an ownCloud log file type, very, very simple to do, and ultimately set up the collector so that it will go ahead and start pulling that information in. All of this stuff is very, very basic and easy to do once you have Splunk installed. Now, the other piece that I want to cover off is, sort of helping you visualize how this works. Sort of where does this fit into the ecosystem? And this is my rather rudimentary diagram, but I think, again, it gives you a very simplistic view of sort of how this works. Obviously, you've got your end users that are coming in through your firewall and your load balancer to your various ownCloud servers. You've got your storage and your database, and then ultimately you're dropping Splunk in. Now, Splunk can run as a virtual appliance. It can run on a physical piece of hardware. It can run as on a shared instance, so you can actually run Splunk with something else. So ultimately, Splunk will get set up and runs as a web server with various data collectors. Ultimately, it's going to go ahead and collect data from those various ownCloud servers, the ownCloud logs themselves, and you can expand that to grab, the web server logs, the logs from the storage box, the logs from the database server, if you so choose. But ultimately, it just gets dropped into the environment, and ultimately a set of connectors will allow you to either pull or ultimately install a small piece of software on these various elements to push data over to the Splunk server. And again, depending on what your network security structure looks like, that pull or push decision can get made, and we're certainly happy to help you make that based on what we know of the product. Then you're going to actually set up the collection of data. Now, obviously data collection via TCP or UDP can be done. It's not expected that you'll have local access. You can go ahead and listen on various ports for that information. You can actually deploy Splunk software so that it will go ahead and take those files and push them down to the Splunk server, which will then go ahead and index them in a database. That's the forwarder that you can install on the monitored server. You can also manually add data to a Splunk index. So if you've got something that you want to import that you haven't quite set up for automated collection of data yet, you can go ahead and take that file and manually add it to an index on the Splunk system, which will ultimately incorporate that into the 360-degree log view that you get of the entire stack, and ultimately allow you to go ahead and monitor exactly what's happening in your own cloud instance. Now, what you get here is reviewing of data in simple, human-readable format. Now, this is one of those areas where I want to jump over to my Splunk instance here, and as you can see, I've got a bunch of data that I have imported, and I'm grabbing this information. And what you get here is, obviously a nice clean timestamp that allows you to go ahead and see when this event took place. What was, in our case, what was the app that created this log entry? So I get, in this case it was LDAP. What was the logging level of this message? What was the actual message itself? So what message was being displayed here? In this case, I had a connection issue with the LDAP backend. I couldn't connect to the LDAP server. I'm also getting a sense for the source type, where this came from, so which log did this come from, what was the message, and ultimately the message allows me to go ahead and understand what was happening. I can also search or slice and dice the data based on these messages. So if I want to know all the times that Joe Smith accessed a file, I could simply come in here and sort based on that message. What I also get to do here is basically do things like extract the source. So if I want to go ahead and extract the source information because I want to build a custom report, so I can go ahead and extract that information as well. Over to the right, or the left rather, what I have is the ability to go ahead and again start the process of slicing up the different message types. So if I want a quick, easy way to go ahead and see, when's the last time, or show me a pattern around hiccups that I've had with connecting to LDAP, or problems with a login filter, or somebody accessing the system. So I want to see all of the failed login attempts, or I want to see all of the access or sharing of a particular file, who's shared that file with whom. I can actually do all of that integration here and ultimately get this to a point where it's presenting me with exactly the information that I'm looking for. Because this is a web or browser-based application, I can, as an administrator, share this information with the finance department, with corporate compliance, with any sort of element that I want to, just by simply sending them a link and setting them up with a login, and they can go ahead and access this information from here. The other thing I'm getting across the top here is the volume of entries. So as you can see here, set against the backdrop of date and time. So I can see if I have a large number of entries in a specific day or for a specific time slice, it may be something that I need to take a closer look at. So again, very, very simple, very easy way to be able to come in here or give others access to this information and make it nice and simple. So let me bounce back to the presentation real quick, and we'll be actually coming back to the product here in just a couple of minutes. So again, we've covered simple reviewing of data in simple human-readable format. I talked a little bit about being able to slice this data up. So again, you're collecting the ownCloud logs, and you want to be able to see, as you're getting all of that great data from our ownCloud logging module, you want to be able to narrow what you're looking at, because you may be monitoring the entire ownCloud stack from here. So we want to make sure we give you access to just the data that you're interested in, or just the data that the consumer of this information, whether it be, again, finance, corporate security, whoever it might be, you can go ahead and offer them up access to this information and let them get to exactly what it is that they need. The other piece here that's worth mentioning here is the ability to produce reports. So I want to be able to come in and actually produce a hard copy report. I want to be able to present that to the corporate security group, or I want to be able to present that to a department head to show them what's happening in the system. Now in this case here, I've just got a very general trending of the types of alerts that I'm seeing. But if I bring this down to, here's a report on failed login attempts. Here's a report on, do we have a security issue here? Do we have somebody trying to access the system after hours consistently and they're failing? I want to go ahead and present, who's accessing what data. So I can quickly, at the directory level, drill into who's has access to what. So that at my fingertips, I've got quick, easy access to information like this without having to go digging through text files, without having to go digging through server logs. I can actually present this in a human-readable format, as well as give my internal business partners access to this information. So again, making it very, very simple. The next piece here that I want to talk about is one of the more powerful pieces of this. So that is the creation of alerts based on flagged log entries. So as I see a log entry come across the screen, or as I see patterns start to emerge, I may want to be alerted to a specific message. So I can come into the Splunk tool and actually create an alert based on a specific log message. So I can come in here and actually create alerts that, I can go ahead and give it a name here. I can go ahead and schedule, what do I want to do here in terms of how often do I want to get these alerts? Do I want to run it on a schedule and actually interrogate the logs and pull out those specific messages? Or do I want to monitor in real time, which then gives me the ability to go ahead and check the Splunk index as it's collecting data on a minute-by-minute basis, hour-by-hour basis, and really define, how many of these instances of this message do I want to see before I trigger an alert. So again, all of these things are very customizable. And then ultimately, what action do I want to take here? So if I'm in the ownCloud logs and I know that, I've got a specific user that shouldn't have access to the system anymore. I believe I've taken them out. I've put a ticket in to have them taken out of the system. But as a security professional, I want to go ahead now and be alerted if that user somehow continues to be able to access the system. I go ahead and set up an alert here based on those log entries for that user accessing the system, and I can go ahead and send out an email, run a script, trigger another alert, so I can go into the alert manager and then trigger a set of cascading alerts to various individuals within the organization. So again, very, very powerful stuff when it comes to actually being able to take all of the great data that you're getting with the ownCloud logging module and actually turning it into something that's actionable from that perspective. So again, that's the alerting piece here that I wanted to cover. And again, I spent a little time on that because I feel like it's something that from a security perspective you really want to take a close look at and really, again, makes that ownCloud logging data actionable. So guys, in terms of the value that you're getting here, and one of the things that I always like to talk about when we talk about the ownCloud product is the ability or that logging piece and the value that that logging piece brings to the table. When you look at the value of sort of ownCloud and the ownCloud logging module in a tool like Splunk, what you're getting here is, a quick and easy setup. So both ends of the equation here are very, very simple to stand up. Both real-time and historical views of what's going on inside of this ownCloud install. So, I mentioned before us being able to leverage and grab that information from the ownCloud logging module, but also looking at the web server logs, the database logs, the storage server logs. So there's a lot to look at and a lot of moving parts here. We've got easy export and reporting. So we're taking that ownCloud logging data and allowing you to create reports. We're harnessing the power of that logging module. So we're doing some really great things with that logging and being able to allow you to really look at who's accessing, maintain control of your data, which is why you're implementing ownCloud to begin with. So we're really giving you the ability to harness the power of that module. And really, it's about end-to-end accountability. So you as an administrator and those consumers of this information being able to make sure that you're able to provide security logs and accountability for who's accessing what. And then lastly, the ability to set up those alerts and get up-to-the-minute status of your ownCloud instance, which is really a powerful thing once you've got, 5,000, 20,000, 15,000 users on the system. You want to make sure that you're monitoring that as closely as possible, and a tool like Splunk combined with the ownCloud logging module is going to allow you to do that. And then lastly, guys, before I open this up to questions, and this is something that we always like to cover, is, talking to you a little bit about, the ownCloud Community versus Enterprise Edition. We talked today about the logging module and all the power that's associated with that logging module and actually magnifying that power with a tool like Splunk. But it's important to note that that comes with that ownCloud Enterprise Edition. This is one of the benefits, one of the things that you're getting. Now, obviously, we encourage anybody and everybody who wants to go out, download the Community Edition, go ahead and stand it up, get familiar with the product. We love to see that. We love to see feedback coming from users of the Community Edition. These are all goodness for us as ownCloud, the company. However, when you want to really sort of take this to a level where you're going to implement this inside of your enterprise, you're going to implement this thing inside of or out to a large number of users. The support that you get from ownCloud is just one part of the equation. But as you can see here, all of the tools and all of the information that we're going to provide you, all of the elements that we're going to provide you to make this a successful deployment really is where the power of the Enterprise Edition comes in. And hopefully, just by sort of giving you an overview of how to use and magnify the power of the ownCloud logging module, it's just one slice of what we're giving you with that Enterprise Edition, and really partnering with you as an organization to make sure that your file sync and share rollout goes as smoothly as possible and continues to function the way you want it to. So that's something that I wanted to put up there just to make sure that everybody understood sort of the differences in the two. So in summary, guys, just to wrap up, and then we'll start looking at some questions. Ultimately, ownCloud is here to solve the Dropbox problem that I've defined at the beginning of the presentation. Secure, on-site, enterprise-level file sync and share. That's customizable. That's extensible. We're really going to help you create the solution that you want to present to your users. Then you combine the ownCloud Enterprise Logging Module with a tool like Splunk, and you really get a turnkey system for auditing and monitoring of that system. Again, the idea behind this is you're going to roll this out to all of the users in your enterprise. You want to be able to manage and control. Complete visibility into the system, including end user behavior. So not only is it diagnostic information about the system, but it's auditing, it's accountability, it's understanding who's doing what with that precious data. And then ultimately monitoring the entire stack. So one of the challenges that you have with any multi-tier application is how do I get to a place where I can monitor the entire stack? And this is one of the reasons why we've chosen Splunk as a tool to show you, because we feel like Splunk has got all of that. So it magnifies what we're doing, but it also makes it simple for you to go ahead and grab those Apache logs, those Windows logs, those SQL Server or MySQL logs, and again, combine everything and correlate all those events in one tool. And then the last thing I want to leave you with here is as you go out and embark or endeavor to go ahead and stand something like this up, we're here to help. We want to make sure that you understand that part of what we provide is that help in terms of getting you stood up. So work with your account manager. If you've got questions, we can bring technical resources to bear to help you stand this up and make sure that you have a successful implementation. With that said, we're going to go ahead and open it up to any questions. And before we take them, I just want to draw your attention to the bottom of the screen there. We've got another webinar scheduled May 14th, where we're going to get into integrating ownCloud with Active Directory, and LDAP. So being able to go ahead and create a scenario where you're able to manage those ownCloud users via your Active Directory or LDAP. So let me go ahead and look at a couple of questions here. Can this logging module and Splunk solution help me set up an audit trail for all of my company's documents? Absolutely. So one of the nice things about this is, and I'll talk a little bit here about, one of the things that really ownCloud does in the enterprise. So we're basically allowing you to create a single access point. So behind the scenes, you can consolidate all of your file servers, all of the sort of mount points that you have for this data, consolidate them into sort of one interface for those users. So you're only managing a single interface for iOS and Android, for web and synchronization. So by consolidating all of those CIF mounts or all of that sort of data behind the scenes into an ownCloud instance and making ownCloud the access point for all of that, you're getting just what you've asked for there, a logging module that's going to go ahead and actually act as an audit trail for every document, every piece of data in your organization. So yes, the short answer is we certainly can do that. Does the logging module come with the Community Edition? So guys, this is a great question, and as I had mentioned before, this is one of the areas where we separate the Community Edition from the Enterprise Edition. So the logging module as it lives today, and sort of as we're discussing today, is an enterprise-only feature. So if you want to leverage the logging module, if you want that level of logging, you want that level of audit and accountability, you will need to implement this alongside of the Enterprise Edition versus the Community Edition of the product. Okay, let's see here. Can a real-time alert automatically reprovision ownCloud to shut off a user? You certainly can do that. Now, depending on what that user backend looks like. So if you have a user backend that is linked into, say, LDAP or Active Directory, and you see that user log in and perform a certain behavior, you have to know what that behavior is going to look like and how that behavior is going to present itself in the ownCloud log, which is something we can help you with. One of the elements of Splunk, as you saw in the alert creation piece, is to kick off a script. So if I want to go ahead and write a PowerShell script or something along those lines that will go ahead ultimately and remove that user from ownCloud, it's certainly something we can do, yes. So guys, I think that's all we have for questions. I really appreciate everybody coming out. Hopefully you found this useful. If you have follow-up questions, if you want more information, I'd encourage you to reach out to us. All of our contact information is up here. As you can see, we've got sales@owncloud.com along with an 877 number there. We've also got various avenues to contact us at owncloud.com as well. So reach out to us. We're happy to help out in any way we can. Again, if you have the time and are interested, we'd really encourage you to sign up early for our next webinar because we feel like those seats will fill up fast. Guys, this will also be available for replay. We've recorded the session, and you'll all get an email with a link to that as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you.